I'm Julie Barkey with this Senate update. The Senate began moving its major finance bills off of the floor on Monday, beginning with the Omnibus, State Departments, and Veterans Finance Bill. That bill has a budget target of $1.2 billion, and it reflects a minimal increase to its base level funding. We caught up with the bill author, Senator Tom Saxhaug, to highlight some key provisions in the legislation, and lead Republican Roger Chamberlain discusses the amendments he offered. Senator Saxhaug, let's begin with highlighting a few of the key provisions from your bill.
Well, I think the biggest one is that the total of the bill is just over $1 billion, and it's barely changed from 2 years ago, the last base, 2013. I think it's a good bill in that I think we have a very efficient Minnesota government, and this kind of concludes that we don't have to make too many increases to take care of our people. And so I think that the highlight of this bill is the Senate office building to some extent, and the 1.8% increase that we're going to give the state employees and the state departments to work with. And the one thing about the State Department budget bill, of course, is that it's got the three biggies in it: the Department of Administration, the MMB, and the Department of Revenue. And they ask for different things, and sometimes we give it to them and sometimes we don't. So I think that this was a good year. We had a little bit of a surplus, and they had a couple of good ideas. So in some cases we gave them a little bit of an increase, but we didn't agree with other things, and so that's what happened.
What about from the veterans standpoint?
The veterans are always taken care of pretty well. They get the 1.8 increase, and whenever when they come up with a good idea of how we can take care of veterans, we go along with them. I think the best one we have this year for the veterans is that the National Guard people, when they work for government, cities and counties, we're going to compensate. We're going to make sure that they get paid when they go to take their National Guard duty, and many times the cities and the counties aren't compensated. Most of them do pay them, and so we think that's fair, and so that's what's going to happen there.
Typically, your bill is not overly controversial. However, as you mentioned, the state office building is a part of your legislation. Do you anticipate some dust-ups on the Senate floor today?
I've had questions in both my committee as we were bringing the bill out and the Finance Committee. I don't think that you may disagree with how it's done, but we have already issued the bonds. We are already paying in lieu of rent, and so there's really not a heck of a lot you can do about it other than say that you don't agree with how it was done. I think that state office building, Senate office building, has turned out to be, savior would be a little bit of a stretch, but I think it's turned out to be a pretty good thing, given the fact that this Minnesota State Capitol is going to be in such shambles because of the reconstruction next year. So I think there are two amendments on here. We might as well cut right to the chase. The two amendments that were put on here that were significant are that the Minnesota House would be, if they decided they didn't want to get out of here, would be asked to pay up to $500,000 for expenses because of the way that the contractor would have to work around them. That was amended onto my bill. The second one is, and this bill has a $250 million bottom line, is that we added a reserve for the future of $250 million. So this, aside from what we pay for, there's $250 on the bottom line, and the Minnesota Senate's bills, if you add them all together, let's say in 4 years we have a little bit of a downturn in the economy, we will have the ability to come up with almost $2 billion, which, as we know, if we'd had that in the first decade of this century, we would have been in much better shape, particularly in the education.
Senator, you opened the door to my last question, and that is, let's look ahead to conference committee. Do you think having this amendment put in your legislation is going to set up maybe a showdown with the House? How acrimonious do you think there'll be any acrimony when this goes into conference committee?
Well, I think it could be a good discussion on whether you believe that you need to give all the money back, so to speak, by reducing taxes
I was referencing the state office building.
Do I think that, again, the Senate office building's there, the bonds have been sold, there's not a lot to argue about, really. But I'm not, that being,
with the House not being a part of it.
The House being part of it. As what we're getting to right now, and this is not meant to be funny or even any kind of a threat, but there's generally not going to be any water over here, and no bathroom facilities, and I would just hope maybe they don't want to go, and we offered and have room for them in the Senate office building. Maybe they don't want to go there, but I think it's important that they vacate this building so we can do the good job that we need to do to bring it back to what it was when it was built.
Is that the argument, discussion that you will bring into conference committee?
I think I'll wait and ask Representative Chairman Anderson and see what her reaction is.
So, Senator Chamberlain, let's talk about the amendments. You don't need to talk about all of them, but provide a few key amendments that will be offered.
Well, there's three. One for the state office building, one for the pay increases, and one for the growth of the government. They have automatic growth set up over 2 years of 3.6% in the bill. It's just automatic. There's no programs or targets for it. Secondly, the pay increases, automatic, and we're going to address that. And the state office building, which is costing taxpayers $95 million and not not $80 as they suggested, because of the way they had to fund it. So, state office building, fees, fines, and salaries.
Overall, what's your impression of the bill as it stands?
Well, it does not focus on long-term constraint of government. They're not really targeting anything. It's just automatic increases. So I think it's a little sloppy. It could be tighter, and we could target, the money could be used for education, or it could be used for nursing homes or PCA. So there's those things. So instead of just throwing 3.6% increase automatic, we could certainly tighten it up and put that money other places.
So moving ahead then into conference committee, how do you see it as your role? Do you see it as your role as working with the House Republicans to try to come to some kind of an agreement? The two bills are very different.
Well, I would hope so. I think the House is a little bit tighter on theirs than Senator Saxhaug and DFL have been here. So we're going to bring some things to light, and hopefully they'll have a little change of heart as they go into conference committee.
Finally, Senate office building. You mentioned it briefly. Senator Saxhaug said at this point, really, there's not much anybody can do except to say that they don't like the way it was passed to begin with, how the funding was passed. So what can you really do at this point?
Well, they can refinance this. They can finance it the proper way through GO bonds. GO bonds would be less expensive and more secure. Right now, the way they have it financed is costing us almost $15 million more. And it puts the bondholders at risk, and we'll have to come back here every 2 years and appropriate the money. So it can be redone and protect bondholders and taxpayers.
We've talked about the controversial provisions. What about the veterans? Do you think they're protected?
Overall, they are. We have a couple of things that we're going to ask for the veterans, but overall, it's not a real problem.